Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on Monday, April 11th. It's also a great pleasure to be joined by two special guests who will be talking about, how to have more younger folks, younger Vermonters run for public offices such as Select Board or other town offices. Here to talk about that with us is Martha Cornwell, who was recently elected to the Shaftsbury Select Board. She's also a member of the town's planning commission and works at the Shaftsbury Memory Clinic and at Clearbrook Farms. Martha, good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Also here to join us to give us some additional perspective on all that is John O'Keefe, the town manager of Manchester and a frequent face on GNAT-TV's News Project. John, good to have you back.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Andrew.
Martha joined the Shaftsbury Select Board just this past March. And, Martha, I guess just to kind of get us started here, what prompted you to run for the Select Board? You were already involved in local politics or local affairs in Shaftsbury, but what gave you the idea to take that next step?
Thanks. Quite a few things kind of, I think, matched together so that I could run. I had been involved in the Planning Commission for several years, and then COVID hit, and our whole world has kind of changed since then. And the ARPA money was one of the big reasons why I chose to get involved. We kind of have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be doing really amazing things for our community. And so I had been watching the Planning Commission, and they kind of put it out to the community. What do we want? What do we envision our towns to look like? What is our community needing? And I put together a campaign, have never campaigned in my life, and that was a learning experience for me. I'm lucky to have a wonderful community and very supportive community, having grown up here in Shaftsbury, and so was able to put together a team and be successful in my first run for Select Board.
So as we were talking there back, I guess it would have been in January, February, about your bid for the Shaftsbury Select Board, we happen to mention that there are very few Vermonters of your age who are in town office, and I guess I just wondered if you could give us some sense as to why you think that's the case. I mean, is it simply a question of folks are busy with work and family commitments and one commitment or another? Or is it just a case that this seems to be something that, that's what people who are 50 years old or older do, and that they don't really feel a kind of a sense that, well, it's my turn for that yet?
Right. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. So I'm in the millennial generation, and our whole generation is very into volunteerism, but I think in very different ways than previous generations. And so I think a lot of our volunteerism happens online and in activism that is differently structured. So I think that that's part of it. We're in kind of the prime of our lives at the moment. So kids, schooling, all sorts of other things are taking place. I know that for myself personally, and many of my friends that are in my same age group, we're working multiple jobs to pay our student loans and other kind of things that need to get taken care of. And that kind of takes out a lot of the time that you have in the evening time to be at meetings. I will have to say, though, that COVID has kind of changed the game in certain ways. Having meetings either hybrid or online has been really helpful in that you can get home from work and then be able to get online. And so I'm hoping that we kind of think and talk about how we include people and how access is granted for meetings, because I think that's one of the keys is to kind of figure out in your community how people show up. And I think having an option online really helps.
So John, let me bring you into this here. You've been the town manager now for about 15 years, and you've seen a lot of select board members come and go over that time. I mean, not very many of them have been in their 30s or even 40s since 2007 when you first became the town manager in Manchester. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I guess there's a lot of different factors at play here. It was interesting when I first got here. I was 35, and I was always the youngest person in the room. Every meeting, no matter what the topic was, I was always the youngest person. Now I'm starting to, I'm a self-professed Gen Xer. So I was in school. It was Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and grunge was big, and Clinton was in the White House, and it was a different time. And you do see a lot of differences actually between Gen X and the millennials, especially as far as how the millennials are getting involved in things, whereas the Gen Xers really didn't. They were standoffish. I think we were sort of the one between the baby boomers that were very involved, and now this group. So, I'm sort of embarrassed to when it comes to civic participation, kind of embarrassed to say I'm a Gen Xer. In Vermont, it's interesting because we're in the oldest county in one of the oldest states in the country. So even if you just look at the pure numbers, like, okay, what size is the bench that we're pulling younger people from? The bench is really small. So I think that there's just a raw numbers issue. But it's really important to have this discussion because the millennials are now becoming the primary workforce in America. And so communities are really trying to attract millennials, but how do you attract them if you can't think like them? There is a different mindset. It's interesting when the baby boomers and the Gen Xers sit around, we have this sort of like, oh, here's what the millennials want, or here's what they think. And it's a broad spectrum. They have a lot of core beliefs, like, a lot less reliance on materialistic things, like Martha was saying, very web tech savvy. But I think that you've got to have that new generation at the table if you want to try to attract these people to your community, because it's really about creating an atmosphere in whatever community you're talking about that is welcoming for all sorts of different folks, whether it's age or background, education, whatever the issue is. Having these broad coalitions in the community is really important. So I think it's just, at some point it's just about the numbers. That when you look at the pyramid in Bennington County, the group that Martha is part of is actually the smallest demographic of all of them. Mm-hmm. And it's really this sort of this bell curve, the upside down bell curve, where you're looking at this 30 and 40-year-olds, and there's a big dip there. Well,
so as the baby boomer in the room here, and thinking,
I didn't want to say it.
Grateful Dead and the Rolling Stones. Now I feel like I'm ready to head out to pasture anytime now. But anyway, it's interesting. Just to build on what you were just saying there, John. I found myself thinking, even outside of select boards, planning boards, development review boards, other town offices. I'm trying to think of up and coming community leaders, people within the business community, let's say. Are you seeing a good representation, around the Manchester area?
Not like we should. It's interesting, actually. Our workforce is very representative of folks that are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Most recently, including our police department, has really taken a turn to be younger. But on the boards, not really. And I think that's part of the conundrum too. I mean, Martha probably has more insight on this, but I think the new generation of people want to be impactful. They want their time to be well valued. And I think that a lot of times the other boards that are just as important, it's kind of viewed like, oh, if it's not the select board or if it's not state rep, it's not as important. And I think that that's where, the other thing that's really interesting too is if you look at government in Chittenden County, there are a lot more younger folks, for example, on the Burlington City Council, elected state reps and things like that. And I think that does kind of show you that Chittenden County is a much younger county than Bennington County. So it does show you what it can look like.
Hmm. Well, Martha, I guess I'm back to you. Do you think that there is an understanding about, what some of the priorities of the members of your generation are by town officials currently? Do you think they kind of, get it as to what is important to you? You mentioned things like student loans and work commitments and what have you. Do you think that, they're able to kind of understand the perspective that you feel is important to in a community?
So certainly I think some of them have more of a sense of that if they've been former educators or have been or have children that are my age, which some of our select board members do. But I want to jump off something that John was saying about how millennials feel time is the most valuable thing that we have. And I think that has been very much drilled into us from early childhood, going through all of our schooling and being impactful. And I think that one of the things that I run into a lot, having been on various boards in the town government, is that they follow a very old structure and they follow Robert's rules, and there's a whole procedure, and when you want to get something done you have to form a committee, and then you go to committee, and then you present to the select board, and in the amount of time that all of that's happening, we could have gotten through all of the things that we needed to do. And so I think that a lot of young people look at these boards, they realize that, yes, they may be doing something, but it's something that's going to happen 1, 2, 5 years down the road. And that it may be more impactful for them to use their time outside of these boards to do similar things, whether it's recreation things. We're very concerned about the environment, planting trees, because when we have gone to the board with ideas and energy, sometimes that isn't met with the same kind of energy and enthusiasm, and we're not seeing the results. And I think seeing the results is really important, and being very transparent about what you're doing, whether that's sharing it on Facebook or TikTok or whatever social media, or even Front Porch Forum is like one step up from, just putting it on your town website. So I think that that's a really big gap that we are needing to bridge that divide, to kind of say, yes, some of these structures are very important, and there is history behind, doing meetings the way they are. But if we want more participation and energy, perhaps it's better to have work parties that are doing things, or potlucks. A lot of millennials are very social people, and especially when you have so many other demands on your time, getting together to do something and actually do something impactful, like planting trees or whatever other kind of big items that are needed to be done, painting town hall, those kinds of things, to make it kind of a gathering situation, as opposed to, you need to form a committee and be on this committee, and then we'll figure out how to paint Coal Hall, or any of the other kind of ideas and things like that.
I had an actual interesting story. When I first got here, we had a student representative on the planning commission, and she couldn't vote because she wasn't 18. But she actually had some really good perspective on different things, and often really made some of the older members think about how they were going to vote by raising issues. And it was a really good experience. And what was interesting is she was an older high school senior. When she turned 18, the select board put her on as a voting member at 18 years old. But when we interviewed some of the older long-term members about her, when we were thinking about putting her on full time, they said, yeah, we've had discussions where she's been the turning point in the entire discussion, because she looked at things differently. And I think that's part of the importance of having people from different generations, is viewing things differently. And I think while you can try to understand somebody that has a different background, it's very hard to put yourself in their shoes and actually think for them. So you can try to have an understanding of their belief structures, or what is important to them. But I think that it's impossible to grasp it, because the old saying, walk a mile in someone's shoes. I mean, it's really important that we just not only, try to understand other people's perspectives, but we actually include them in the process?
I would say, just from my perspective, it does vary. The Planning Commission in Shaftsbury meets twice a month, usually for about an hour. And that has been because there have been several women on the board who have kind of restructured how we meet. We have a very strict agenda, and it has time frames for everything. And if the time frame is up, then that gets tabled to the next meeting. And so it makes things very short and to the point, and everybody has an assigned role in each of those specific areas that we're talking about at that meeting. And then in the select board meetings, also meeting twice a month, and usually anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. But mostly I find that it's pretty manageable with kind of all the other tasks and assignments. I think select board has a little bit more associated with it, especially if you get into liaison assignments, which our select board does. And so I have 7 other boards that I kind of check in with and make sure that I'm, seeing, and if they have any concerns or questions, they know that they can reach out to me. But it really, as far as your impact, has a big effect for the hour or 2 hours that you're spending in those meetings, because so much comes out of them with conversation and kind of where our priorities are going with the town. So it's a worthwhile endeavor.
I wanted to ask you, Martha, what was campaigning for the position like? You were in a competitive race, which is not always the case these days. In fact, it's kind of more the exception, I think, than the rule at this point. I mean, did you go out knocking on door to door? I mean, I realize in the COVID era that's a little more problematic than it would have been 2 or 3 years ago, I guess. Or was most of your campaigning kind of more social media or internet oriented?
So I kind of hit it all. I did social media with, I built my own website. I had a Facebook page, and then used Front Porch Forum along with question and answer periods. And then I also wrote probably 400 handwritten letters to people that I knew in the community, and then also went door to door. So I did everything I could to get the vote out. Typically March elections, especially when it's not a big election year for national elections, have pretty low turnout, but we really got people out, and I'm really proud of that and our town.
So John, back to you for a second. I mean, what do you think a town like Manchester could do to kind of try and draw more youngsters into the political process in town? Is there any kind of strategy or approach that you can think of that says, gee, if we could do this or that, maybe we get more 30 or 40 somethings interested in throwing their hats in the ring when it came around to the town meeting and running for whatever seats might be up for grabs?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think like what you really could do to try to engage that. I guess one thing that some communities have is they actually have like a youth commission where they actually have, and I think that's partly, anything that we do, it's interesting. We've experimented, at Parks and Rec, for example, and having like a young professionals group. It is a really tough group to engage in. I'd say we have a really vigorous Parks and Rec program, in the one group that we struggle with, I'd say, is probably 16 to 35, 16 to 30, somewhere in that gamut. It's really tough to draw people in. I think more programming like that, there is I do feel like that particular age group is really resistant to being a participant in the government program. Say that, through Parks and Rec Department, we had this idea of having an outing group that, they go on hikes and things like that, and trying to pair up people in that same age group because there's so few of them. And it was tough to do. I think that the newest generation is really self-directed. like that's something that really, I think, and Martha could probably either confirm or deny this, but it's really something that that group is looking to sort of take the bull by the horns and actually create their own group. They're not looking for somebody else to try to lead them in a specific direction. I think even just tapping into some of the people that are leaders in that group, like Martha, is really a good way to try to engage. And then, of course, more social media. And part of that is, the town got on social media really early during Irene, and we have some really big numbers. But I've got a 16 and 18-year-old, and they're not on Facebook. Facebook is where the dads and the grandpas are. And my daughter wanted me to make a TikTok video with her the other day, and I was like, I don't even know what TikTok is. We are on Twitter and Instagram, but it is a constant battle to try to keep up with. Everything is being replaced by something new. Once people like you and I, Andrew, show up on a platform, everyone else leaves.
Right. I know.
That's the beginning of the end.
Been there.
Gosh, I do have to say that yes, a lot of what you're saying, John, is totally true. But I also have to say that one of the best ways that I have gotten people on boards or committees or things like that is a very old-fashioned way, by literally going up to their door and having a conversation, a face-to-face conversation, saying, hey, this is what's happening. We need you on this board. You're a businessman, or you're a farmer, or we need this perspective on this board or on this committee, and had really good luck with that. I really do think that reaching out to people face to face, especially as this kind of older generation is kind of retiring and leaving boards, to then make sure that you're reaching out and saying, hey, you are a leader. I mean, just having somebody say that to me as a younger woman, that you're an up and coming person in this area and you have really good ideas, and we think that you would be really great for this board. I think we need to not forget that kind of power really plays a big role, I think, in getting the next generation of people into positions.
And it is this, I'm a big believer that success breeds success. So like somebody like you that was successful is sort of this you're the sort of the catalyst for getting more people on there, because it looks more doable. They see you do it. You can talk them into it. It is. Andrew, the one thing that keeps coming up over and over again is that this is a group that's highly social.
Yes.
As much as they, might be, tech savvy, it is a very social, grassroots demographic that, like Martha was saying, actually going and banging on their door.
And to have ideas. And, I think that was why Bernie was so successful with so many young people, was that he's firm in his convictions and firm in kind of the ideas that are most important to us: student loans, the environment, affordable housing. All of those things are a huge part of what we are struggling with here in Vermont and all over the country as millennials. And I think the more that we can reach out and talk about these issues, and this is municipal government, we're not going to solve everything, but to be meeting people where they are is really important, I think.
We had planned to include Vinnie Thompson of Arlington in this discussion, but a technical glitch prevented him from joining immediately. But we were able to bring him in later on. Vinnie, who owns his own trash hauling business in the Arlington area, ran for the Arlington Select Board last March, but came in second in a competitive race. But it sounds like he may be back on the ballot in the future. First question was kind of what prompted you to run for the Select Board, back earlier this year?
A young guy with a young family, active with the whole community. I just wanted to try and do something good for the community that I live in. And being not from Vermont, I just know that I wanted to just see what I could do to change some things and go from there.
So, what were some of the things you were, thinking about changing or trying to change or influence?
More enough. I mean, trying to get more young people to join the community. I know a lot of people are stuck on like computers and stuff like that. I know that's nowadays of everything going on, but more enough, I just want to see like myself and younger active members just joining and doing the things. Like the fire department, for one thing, we have 8 junior members from high school that are just loving it right now, and they're just wanting to thrive and learn more. And that's something I would love to do, just to get more people involved. And not a whole lot of young people are around that wants to do those things, but just to have that younger thrive, it would be pretty nice.
So why is it do you think more younger folks don't kind of step forward and run for select board or planning board or some of the other town offices?
I might be scared. I mean, I have absolutely no clue what I'm doing. I'm just jumping right in, and I'm going to dive head first. I just want to learn everything and go from there. That's how I look at it. That's one thing I've always been a person to do, is hands-on stuff and jump right in and learn. That's probably one thing about this younger generation. Not saying anything bad about them, but they just aren't really a push kind of crew that I can see.
Well, do you think it's a case of like, you guys are in the, you're building a career, you're starting families, you got a lot of other things going on. I mean, is it just a case where there's just not enough time to kind of, budget a certain amount of hours every month to go to a select board meeting and kind of do the initial prep for them? You think that's part of it?
I mean, a lot of it's probably that. I know it's really tough for me. I have my wife and 2 kids. We go with the fly. And I'm on the fire department as assistant chief. I help out rescue whenever I can. I have my own business I'm jumping into. Then I work at the school, so I'm barely even home as it is. So we just go along with the flow and do what we can do as a young family. And any chance I get, I know I'm right with the kids and the wife trying to do what I could do.
So you think you're going to try it again, even though the first time didn't work out so, as well as you wanted? Do you think you'd give it another shot next year?
No, I definitely would. I mean, I'm not a person that'll back down from anything. I like a challenge. And like I said, I have absolutely no clue what I'm doing, but I'm willing to learn and see what I can go from there. That's for sure.
So what would be, I'm just wondering, what would be some of the priorities you'd be pushing if you were on the select board now? I mean, there kind of a big discussion around wastewater going on in the town, trying to fix the septic and public sewer system and stuff like that. Would that be something you think is like important, or there's some other things that you feel are more important, or at least as important, that the select board ought to be paying attention to?
I mean, the wastewater treatment, I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, that would benefit a lot of people. I know just from around, it's a rural area, and being a city folk, I just would see that benefiting the town for sure, for all the areas. And if we can get another one in, I mean, the whole town can benefit from that, all treatment plants and everything. I mean, and another big thing would be probably, improving roads. I know a lot of people complain about the dirt roads and the potholes. And I mean, more enough, you live in Vermont where a lot of it is majority back roads or dirt and everything else. So you just got to go with the flow with that. That's, as I said, I just go with the flow. But I know that's one thing. The town crews, they definitely do a lot of good jobs around the towns and everything. I mean, just not Arlington. All the towns do a really good job trying to keep up with the dirt roads, and that's all you can ask for.
Thanks to all of you who've been watching as well. I hope you found our show interesting, and we'll see you again the next time. Meanwhile, have a great day.